The honey-haired woman burst through the saloon's back door, just as the first fist connected with a jaw behind her. And Sadie Dalton knew she had maybe 30 seconds before the whole place exploded. Whispering Pines, Louisiana, in January of 1865, was supposed to be a quiet stop, a place to rest her bees and disappear. But the man with the gold tooth and the fake warrant had found her anyway. She sprinted across the muddy alley, boots splashing, and nearly collided with a tall figure stepping out of the shadows.
Easy there.
The man caught her shoulders, steadying her, and Sadie looked up into dark eyes framed by shoulder-length black hair and a face that said Shoshone Guide more than Bayou Drifter. He wore a weathered buckskin jacket and moved like someone who knew how to vanish.
Let go, or get out of my way.
She tried to twist free, but he held firm, glancing past her at the saloon's back door.
You running from Hawthorne Kincaid?
Sadie froze.
You know him?
I'm hunting him. Name's Perry Reed. You just made this complicated.
Glass shattered inside the saloon, and boots thundered closer. Sadie made a split-second choice.
Then we run together, or we both get caught. Your call.
Perry's mouth quirked in something like respect, and he released her, spinning to scan the alley.
This way.
He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward a gap between buildings just as the saloon door slammed open, and 3 men poured out. Hawthorne Kincaid, in the lead with that gold tooth flashing when he grinned.
There she is, boys. Remember, I need her alive for the warrant.
Sadie and Perry squeezed through the gap, boots scraping wood, and emerged onto a side street crowded with evening market stalls. Perry didn't slow, weaving between carts, and Sadie kept pace, her heart hammering.
What's your plan?
Working on it.
That's not a plan.
It's all I got.
A bullet cracked past and splintered a cart post. Sadie yelped, and Perry yanked her left, ducking behind a stack of flour sacks. Their faces were inches apart, both breathing hard, and Sadie caught the scent of leather and pine smoke.
You always this much trouble?
You always this bad at rescues?
Perry grinned despite the danger, and for a second, Sadie forgot to be scared. They bolted again, cutting through a canvas tent and scattering a table of dried fish. The vendor shouted, but Sadie didn't stop, following Perry's lead as he vaulted a low fence into a corral. A chestnut mare with white blaze lifted her head and nickered, trotting straight to Sadie.
Rosie. Thank God.
Sadie threw her arms around the mare's neck, and the horse nuzzled her shoulder. Perry stared.
That your horse?
She only answers to my voice. Long story.
We need her now. Can she carry double?
If we don't overload her.
Footsteps pounded closer, and Perry grabbed Sadie's waist, boosting her onto Rosie's bare back, then swung up behind her in one smooth motion. His chest pressed against her spine, and his arms came around to grip the mare's mane.
Tell her to run.
Rosie, go!
The mare exploded forward, jumping the corral fence like it was nothing, and Sadie leaned into the motion, Perry's body a solid wall of heat behind her. They galloped down the rutted street toward the edge of town, Kincaid's shouts fading, but not gone. They reached the river ford just as the sun dipped low, painting the water orange and gold. Sadie slid off Rosie first, boots splashing in the shallows, and Perry dropped beside her, scanning the tree line.
They'll catch up fast. We need to cross.
There's a freight wagon stuck halfway. If we can free it, we can use it for cover.
That's actually smart.
Don't sound so surprised.
They waded toward the wagon, a heavy flatbed with one wheel sunk deep in mud, and the tongue angled wrong. Perry braced his shoulder against the side, while Seti grabbed the tongue, pulling to shift the angle. Rosie stood chest deep in the current, watching.
On 3. 1, 2, 3.
They heaved, and the wheel lurched an inch, then stuck again. Sadie's boot slipped on the muddy slope, and she yelped, losing her grip. Perry lunged, catching her waist with both hands and pulling her against his chest before she could fall. Her left hand gripped his forearm, fingers digging into buckskin, and for a heartbeat they stood frozen, faces inches apart, eyes locked. His breath was warm on her cheek.
Thanks.
Anytime.
A rifle shot cracked across the water, and the spell broke. Perry shoved Sadie behind the wagon and crouched beside her, pulling his revolver.
How many?
I count 3. Kincaid and 2 hired guns.
Same. You know how to shoot?
Better than you'd think.
He handed her a second pistol from his belt, and their fingers brushed. Sadie checked the cylinder. 6 rounds, and nodded. Another bullet punched into the wagon bed above their heads, and wood splintered.
We can't stay here. If they circle around, we're trapped.
Rosie can pull the wagon if we lighten it. Dump the crates.
They worked fast, tossing cargo into the river. Perry lifting the heavy ones and Seti shoving the lighter crates over the side. Water splashed, and the wagon creaked, rising slightly.
Rosie. Come here, girl.
The mare waded over, and Sadie looped the harness around her chest. Fingers flying through knots Perry didn't recognize.
Where'd you learn that?
Beekeeping isn't all I know.
She whistled, and Rosie leaned into the harness, muscles bunching. The wheel groaned, shifted, then pulled free with a sucking sound. They scrambled onto the wagon bed as Rosie hauled it forward, water streaming off the wheels. Perry fired twice, forcing the riders to veer left, and Seti aimed carefully, squeezing the trigger. Her shot clipped the hat off one of Kincaid's men, and the man cursed, ducking.
Nice shot.
I told you.
They reached the far bank, and Perry jumped down, grabbing Seti's hand to pull her after him. She stumbled on the uneven ground, and he caught her again. This time, his hands on her waist, steadying her until she found her footing. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Something that felt like promise.
You good?
Yeah. Let's move.
They ran into the cypress grove, Rosie following at Sadie's whistle, and the shadows swallowed them just as Kincaid's men reached the bank. Perry led them deeper, navigating by instinct, and Sadie matched his pace, her breathing hard but steady. After 10 minutes, Perry stopped beside a moss-draped oak and listened. Silence, except for frogs and cicadas.
We lost them for now.
For now isn't good enough. What's Kincaid's play?
He's got a fake warrant, and he's using it to trap people at the edge of town, extorting them before they can reach the new territorial judge.
The judge who disappeared.
Exactly. I think Kincaid killed him.
Sadie's stomach dropped.
Why?
Kincaid's been working a cave claim outside town. Word is he found a body down there. Someone with inheritance papers. He's trying to claim it before the next train brings family or lawyers.
So he killed the judge to buy time.
And he's using the fake warrant to shake down anyone who might talk.
Seti leaned back against the oak, mind racing.
I made an enemy in the last town because I wouldn't let a cattle baron steal my land. He sent men after me and I ran. Kincaid must have heard I had a price and figured he could collect.
Why didn't you say why?
Because saying it makes it real. Because I'm tired of running.
Perry stepped closer, his expression softer.
Then don't run. Stay and fight. I need your help to finish this.
Why would you need me?
Because you're smart, and you don't quit. And because Rosie only listens to you, which means I'm stuck with you anyway.
Sadie laughed despite herself. A short, breathless sound. And Perry smiled, a real one that reached his eyes.
You're reckless.
You're stubborn.
Guess we're stuck then.
He held out his hand, and she took it, their palms pressing together warm and steady. They moved through the grove until they reached a clearing with a collapsed trapper's cabin, 3 walls standing, and a roof mostly intact. Perry checked inside, found it empty, and motioned Sadie in.
We can rest here tonight, plan our next move.
Kincaid won't stop looking.
No, but he'll expect us to keep running. If we double back at dawn, we can catch him off guard.
Sadie unsaddled Rosie and rubbed the mare down with handfuls of dry moss, while Perry built a small fire in the cabin's stone hearth, keeping the flames low. The warmth felt good after the river crossing, and Sadie sank down on a log bench, exhaustion hitting her all at once. Perry sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and pulled out a canteen.
Drink.
She took it gratefully, the water cool and clean, and handed it back. Their fingers brushed and lingered a moment longer than necessary.
Thank you. For back there at the river.
You would have done the same.
Maybe. But you didn't have to.
Yeah. I did.
The firelight played across his face, softening the hard edges, and Sadie felt something shift in her chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. Perry leaned back against the cabin wall and gestured for Sadie to do the same. She hesitated, then settled beside him, her head resting against his shoulder without planning it. He didn't pull away.
Tell me about the bees.
What?
You said you're a beekeeper's daughter. Tell me.
Sadie smiled in the dark.
My father kept hives in Tennessee, taught me everything. Bees are smart, organized, loyal. They'll protect their queen no matter what. I brought 3 hives with me when I left.
Where are they now?
Hidden in a grove 2 miles south of town. I check them every 3 days.
You plan to stay then?
If I can. If Kincaid doesn't kill me first.
Perry shifted, his arm coming around her shoulders in a gesture that felt protective and easy at once.
He won't. I promise.
You can't promise that.
Watch me.
Sadie turned her head to look up at him, and their faces were suddenly very close. Close enough to count heartbeats. Perry's gaze dropped to her mouth, and Sadie's breath caught. Then Rosie snorted outside, and they both jerked apart, a moment splintering.
We should sleep. Long day tomorrow.
Right. Sleep.
But neither of them moved far, and when Sadie finally dozed off, Perry's arm was still around her. Dawn came fast and cold, the bayou mist rising thick. Sadie woke with Perry's coat draped over her, and the man himself crouched by the hearth, rekindling the fire.
You gave me your coat.
You were shivering.
You must have been cold, too.
I've been colder.
Sadie sat up, folding the coat carefully, and watched him work. His hands were steady, efficient. and she found herself noticing details she'd missed in the chaos yesterday. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hair fell forward when he concentrated, the quiet competence in every movement.
What's the plan?
We go back to town, find proof Kincaid killed the judge, force a confrontation.
That's a terrible plan.
You got a better one?
Sadie thought fast.
The cave. If Kincaid's hiding a body in inheritance papers, that's where the proof is. We go there first, get evidence, then bring it to the town council.
The cave's dangerous. Kincaid probably has it guarded.
So we go quiet. At midday, when his men are in town.
That could work.
Perry stood and offered his hand, pulling Sadie to her feet. They stood toe to toe, still holding hands, and the air felt charged.
You sure about this?
No. But I'm doing it anyway.
That's my girl.
The words slipped out casual, but Sadie felt them land deep, and from the way Perry's eyes widened slightly, he felt it too. They reached the cave by noon, a low opening in a limestone ridge half hidden by palmetto scrub. Perry motioned for silence, and they dismounted, tying Rosie to a sapling. Sadie pulled the pistol Perry had given her and checked it again, her hands steady despite her racing heart.
Stay close. If shooting starts, you run.
Not a chance. We're in this together.
Sadie.
Perry.
He muttered something under his breath that might have been a prayer or a curse, and led the way inside. The cave was cool and damp, the air thick with the smell of clay and old water. They moved carefully, boots silent on stone, and rounded a corner into a wider chamber lit by a single lantern. A man sat on a crate, rifle across his knees, but his head was tilted back against the wall, asleep. Perry gestured, and they slipped past, deeper into the cave. In the next chamber they found it, a canvas tarp covering something man-sized, and beside it, a leather satchel. Sadie knelt and opened the satchel, her breath catching.
Inheritance papers. Deed to a ranch in Texas. The name is Judge Samuel Harrow.
He's the missing judge.
Footsteps echoed behind them, and they spun, but it was too late. Hawthorne Kincaid stepped into the chamber, that gold tooth glinting in the lantern light, and he wasn't alone. Kincaid's smile was slow and mean.
Well now, didn't expect you two to be this stupid.
Perry stepped in front of Sadie, his gun half raised, but Kincaid's men already had rifles aimed.
Drop it, or the girl gets hurt first.
Perry hesitated, and Sadie touched his arm.
Don't.
He lowered the gun, jaw tight with fury. Kincaid stepped closer, his boots grinding on stone.
See, I was gonna let you run. Would have been easier, but you had to go poking around. Now I gotta clean up loose ends.
The whole town will know you killed the judge.
Town council's in my pocket, honey. No one's coming to help.
Sadie's mind raced. The papers were still in her hand, and Kincaid hadn't noticed yet. If she could stall him, maybe Perry could find an opening.
Why'd you kill him? The inheritance wasn't even yours.
Wasn't about the money. Judge was gonna clean up corruption, starting with me. I had to move first.
Kincaid's gaze dropped to the satchel, and his expression darkened.
Give me those papers. Now.
No.
Kincaid's hand moved to his gun, and everything happened at once. Sadie threw the papers at Kincaid's face and dove left, Perry moving with her in perfect sync. Kincaid fired, but the shot went wide, sparking off stone, and Perry tackled one of the riflemen, grappling for the weapon. Sadie scrambled behind a rock outcrop, her heart slamming, and grabbed a loose stone. The second rifleman swung toward her, and she hurled the stone hard, catching him in the temple. He staggered, and Perry wrenched the rifle free, swinging it like a club and dropping the first man cold. Kincaid cursed and fired again, the bullet chipping rock inches from Sadie's head. Perry shoved her flat and returned fire, the sound deafening in the enclosed space.
Run!
Not without you!
Perry grabbed her hand, and they bolted for the cave entrance, bullets sparking behind them. They burst into daylight, blinking hard, and Sadie whistled sharp and piercing. Rosie appeared from the scrub at full gallop, and Sadie caught the saddle horn, swinging up with Perry right behind her.
Go! Rosie, go!
The mare surged forward just as Kincaid emerged from the cave, his face twisted with rage. He fired 3 more shots, but they were already out of range, racing through palmetto and pine toward town. They rode hard for 10 minutes, Rosie's sides heaving, and Perry kept glancing back. No riders yet, but Kincaid wouldn't quit. Sadie guided them off the main trail into thick cypress and willow, splashing through shallow water, the horse picking her way carefully. Perry slid down first and helped Sadie dismount, his hands steadying her waist.
We can't outrun them forever.
We don't have to. We just need to get those papers to the judge before Kincaid can stop us.
Perry nodded and pulled her close, his forehead touching hers for one breathless moment.
You're the bravest woman I've ever met.
And you're the most reckless man.
She smiled and kissed him quick, then pulled back when hoofbeats echoed in the distance. They mounted again and pushed deeper into the bayou, threading between gnarled trees draped with moss. The air was thick and humid, cicadas screaming, and Sadie's shirt clung to her back. Perry pointed ahead to a narrow causeway, built over standing water.
That'll take us to the north edge of town.
They urged Rosie onto the wooden planks, the mare's hooves clattering loud. Halfway across, a rifle shot cracked, and splinters flew from the rail beside Sadie's leg. She yelped, and Perry yanked her low against Rosie's neck.
They're on the far bank.
Sadie saw 3 riders emerge from the trees, Kincaid in the lead, his gold tooth flashing as he grinned. He raised his rifle again and fired. The bullet punched through Rosie's saddle just behind Perry, and the mare screamed, bolting forward. Sadie fought for control, her knees tight, and Rosie thundered off the causeway into mud and reeds. Perry slipped sideways and Sadie grabbed his arm, hauling him back upright.
Stay with me!
Not planning to leave.
They crashed through willows and burst onto solid ground, the town coming into view ahead. Kincaid and his men were closing fast, their horses fresher. Sadie leaned forward and whispered to Rosie, coaxing every last ounce of speed. They galloped past the first houses, and people scattered, shouting. Perry pointed toward the courthouse, a 2-story brick building at the center of the square.
There! Until it's something in the morgrands interesting here bands offer sometimes some poor plus land band enemy. Oft more the wom stress but then 4-year melcher hunder and a son were the eldfimes and lost lads who were kind of viewin' gus but on stress.
They skidded to a halt at the base of the steps, and Sadie jumped down, Perry right behind her. Kincaid reined in hard across the square, his men flanking him, and leveled his rifle at them.
Inside. Now.
Perry shoved Seti up the steps, and they burst through the courthouse doors just as Kincaid fired, the bullet embedding in the doorframe. Inside, a clerk looked up, startled, and Perry slammed the door, throwing the bolt.
Where's the judge?
The clerk pointed upstairs, his face pale. Second floor, but you can't just...
Watch us.
They took the stairs two at a time and found Judge Harlan in his chambers. A gray-haired man with wire spectacles bent over a ledger. He looked up sharply. What's the meaning of this?
Judge Harlan, my name is Sadie Dalton. This is Perry Reed. We have evidence that Hawthorne Kincaid murdered a man named Jacob Mercer and forged documents to steal his inheritance.
Seti slapped the papers onto his desk, her hands shaking. The judge picked them up, his eyes narrowing as he read. Downstairs, something heavy slammed against the door. Perry moved to the window and saw Kincaid and his men dismounting, axes in hand.
They're coming through.
Judge Harlan stood, his jaw tight. If what you say is true, I'll need witnesses and time to verify these documents.
Then you'd better work fast, because Kincaid's about to kill us all.
The judge rang a bell on his desk hard, and a deputy appeared. Get the marshal. Armed escort. Now. The deputy ran, and the judge gestured them to stay behind his desk. Downstairs, wood splintered, and boots thundered on the stairs. Perry drew his pistol and stood in front of Seti, his shoulders squared. The door to the judge's chamber flew open, and Kincaid stepped in, his rifle aimed at Perry's chest. Behind him, his two men blocked the doorway.
You're done, Kincaid.
Kincaid's gold tooth gleamed as he smiled. Am I? I count 3 guns to your 1, and the judge here knows better than to cross me. Judge Harlan rose to his full height, his voice cold. Lower your weapon, Kincaid. I've seen the evidence. You're under arrest for murder and fraud. Kincaid's smile vanished, and his finger tightened on the trigger. Seti's breath stopped. Then boots pounded up the stairs, and the marshal appeared with 4 deputies, rifles leveled. Drop it, Kincaid. For a long moment, Kincaid didn't move. Then he lowered the rifle slowly, his eyes burning with hate. The deputies swarmed him and his men, disarming them and clapping on irons. Kincaid stared at Sadie and Perry as they dragged him past. This isn't over.
Yes, it is.
Seti's voice was steady and fierce. The marshal led Kincaid away, and the room fell silent, except for their breathing. Judge Harlan picked up the papers again, studying them closely. Miss Dalton, Mr. Reed, you've done this territory a great service. I'll see to it that Jacob Mercer's true heirs are notified, and that Kincaid faces a full trial. Seti exhaled hard, and Perry holstered his pistol, his hand finding hers. They walked out of the courthouse together, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. The square was full of townspeople watching, and someone started clapping. It spread through the crowd until the whole square was applauding. Sadie flushed, and Perry grinned, squeezing her hand. They walked to the church at the edge of town, Rosie trailing behind them. The little white building stood quiet in the late afternoon light, its door open. Seti stopped in the doorway and turned to Perry, her hand on his chest.
So what happens now?
Perry smiled and pulled her close, his arms around her waist.
I figure we've got a choice. I can keep drifting, or I can stay here with you and see what comes next.
And which one sounds better?
The second one. By a long shot.
Sadie laughed and kissed him, slow and sweet, and he lifted her off her feet for just a moment. When he set her down, she kept her arms around his neck.
Good. Because I'm not letting you go.
I was hoping you'd say that.
They stood there in the church doorway as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky gold and orange. The town behind them was settling into evening, lanterns flickering to life, and somewhere a dog barked. Perry rested his forehead against hers, his voice quiet.
I never thought I'd find someone who'd ride straight into hell with me.
And I never thought I'd meet someone crazy enough to follow me there.
She grinned, and he kissed her again, longer this time, until they were both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Sadie laced her fingers through his.
Come on, let's go find some dinner. And after that, we'll figure out the rest.
Sounds like a plan.
They walked down the church steps hand in hand, Rosie nickering softly as Sadie patted her neck. The evening was warm and full of promise, and for the first time in a long time, Sadie felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Perry squeezed her hand, and she looked up at him, seeing the same cert they found a table at the back of the saloon, away from the noise, and ordered stew and cornbread. Perry kept his hand on hers while they ate, and Sadie couldn't stop smiling. The bartender brought them coffee, and Perry raised his cup.
To not getting shot today.
I'll drink to that.
She clinked her cup against his and took a sip, savoring the warmth. The saloon was filling up with evening regulars, but they stayed in their quiet corner, talking low. Perry told her about the year he'd spent tracking Kincaid, the close calls and false leads. And Sadie told him about the bees, how she'd learned the trade from her father before he died.
I wanted to keep the hives going, but the town I was in didn't take kindly to a woman running her own business.
Their loss.
That's what I figured. So I packed up and came here.
Perry squeezed her hand.
I'm glad you did.
She leaned closer, her voice dropping.
Me too. Even if it meant almost getting killed 3 times in one day.
Only 3? I count at least 5.
She laughed, and he grinned, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. The bartender brought them pie, and they shared a slice, trading bites and stories until the sun was gone, and the saloon lamps burned bright. When they finally left, the night air was warm and thick with the scent of jasmine. Perry walked her to the boarding house where she'd taken a room, and they stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Sadie turned to him, her heart fluttering.
So, what happens tomorrow?
I was thinking I'd stick around. Maybe help you get those hives set up proper.
You know anything about beekeeping?
Not a thing. But I'm a fast learner.
She smiled and stood on her toes, kissing him softly.
Then I'll teach you.
He pulled her close, his arms around her waist, and kissed her again, slow and deep. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers.
I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere.
Good. Because I'm holding you to that.
They stood there for a long moment, the night settling around them, and then Perry stepped back with a reluctant smile.
Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning.
First light. Don't be late.
He tipped his hat and walked away, glancing back once with a grin. Sadie watched him go, her chest warm, and then climbed the stairs to her room. She lay awake for a while, listening to the sounds of the town and thinking about everything that had happened. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, she was sure of that. But with Perry by her side, she felt ready for anything. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of coffee drifting up from the dining room. Sadie dressed quickly, her hands steady, and met Perry on the porch. He was already there, leaning against the railing with 2 cups in his hands.
Thought you might need this.
She took the cup and smiled.
You're off to a good start.
They walked together to the edge of town, where Sadie had stored her hive boxes in a shed. The morning was cool and bright, and the bayou hummed with life. Perry helped her carry the boxes to a clearing near a stand of wildflowers, and she showed him how to set them up, talking him through each step.
The bees need shelter from the wind, but enough sun to keep the hive warm. And you always approach from the side, never block the entrance.
Got it.
He watched her work, his expression focused, and when she handed him a frame to inspect, he held it carefully, turning it in the light.
See the cells? That's where they store the honey.
It's beautiful.
She looked up at him and found him watching her instead of the frame.
You're supposed to be looking at the bees.
I am looking at something beautiful.
She laughed and shook her head, heat rising in her cheeks.
You're impossible.
And you love it.
She didn't argue. They worked side by side for the rest of the morning, setting up the hives and checking the frames. The bees buzzed lazily around them, and Sadie felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. This was what she'd wanted, a place to build something new, and now she had someone to share it with. When they finished, Perry wiped his hands on his trousers and looked at her.
What's next?
Next, we let the bees do their work. And we do ours.
Which is?
Living.
He smiled and pulled her close, kissing her under the bright morning sky. Sadie wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, feeling the promise of all the days ahead. Over the next few days, Perry helped Sadie establish her beekeeping operation, while they both kept watch for any sign of Kincaid's associates. The territorial judge had finally arrived in town, and with the evidence they'd provided, warrants were issued for the remaining members of the fraud ring. Perry spent his mornings checking traps and scouting the bayou trails, and his afternoons working alongside Sadie with the hives. They fell into an easy rhythm, talking and laughing as they worked. And every night they sat together on the porch of the boarding house, watching the stars come out.
You know, I never thought I'd enjoy this kind of quiet.
Neither did I. But it's different when you're with the right person.
Sadie leaned her head on his shoulder, her hand finding his.
What will you do when the warrants are served? Will you keep tracking?
I don't know. I've been thinking maybe it's time to settle somewhere.
Where?
Wherever you are.
She turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face.
You mean that?
Every word.
He kissed her gently, and she felt the last of her doubts melt away. A week later, the sheriff brought word that the last of Kincaid's men had been arrested. The fraud ring was broken, and the stolen deeds were being returned to their rightful owners. Perry and Sadie stood together in the sheriff's office as he handed them a reward for their part in bringing the operation down.
What will you do with your share?
Buy more hive boxes. Maybe some land. What about you?
I was thinking about buying that land with you.
She stared at him, her heart pounding.
Perry Reed, are you asking me to go into business with you?
I'm asking you to build a life with me.
She laughed and threw her arms around him, kissing him in front of the sheriff and half the town.
Yes. 100 times yes.
Perry lifted her off her feet and spun her around, both of them grinning like fools. When he set her down, she kept her hands on his chest, her eyes bright.
So where do we start?
Right here. Right now.
They spent the afternoon walking the land outside town, finding a spot near the bayou with good sun and shelter. Perry paced off the boundaries while Seti sketched plans in the dirt with a stick, and they talked late into the evening about all the things they'd build together. A cabin, a workshop, more hives, maybe a garden.
We'll need a barn for Rosie.
And a porch big enough for 2 rocking chairs.
And a fire pit for cool nights.
Sounds perfect.
She smiled and took his hand, pulling him close.
It does. Doesn't it?
He kissed her as the sun set over the bayou, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The air was warm and thick with the scent of magnolia and wild jasmine, and somewhere in the distance, a whippoorwill called. Seti felt a deep contentment settle over her, a sense of rightness she'd never known before. This was home, not because of the place, but because of the man standing beside her. Perry wrapped his arms around her waist and held her close, his voice soft.
I love you, Sadie Dalton.
I love you too, Perry Reed.
They stood there together as the stars began to appear, and for the first time in both their lives, the future felt bright and full of promise. The next morning they rode into town to file the deed paperwork and buy supplies. The general store was busy, and the clerk nodded at them with newfound respect. Word had spread about how they'd taken down Kincaid, and people stopped to shake Perry's hand and thank Seti.
This is strange.
What is?
Being the hero instead of the troublemaker.
Get used to it.
She laughed and squeezed his arm. They loaded the wagon with lumber, nails, tools, and a barrel of flour. Perry added a new saddle blanket for Rosie, and Seti picked out seeds for the garden, her mind already racing with plans. As they walked back to the wagon, a young woman approached, her face nervous. She asked if Sadie could help her start a hive of her own, said she'd heard Sadie was the best beekeeper in 3 counties. Sadie blinked, surprised, then smiled and agreed.
Come by next week, and I'll show you everything.
The woman thanked her and hurried off, and Perry raised an eyebrow.
Looks like you're starting a reputation.
A good one this time.
The best kind.
They drove the wagon back to their land and spent the afternoon unloading and organizing. Perry started laying out the foundation for the cabin, while Sadie marked off the garden plot. The work was hard, but satisfying, and they fell into an easy rhythm, moving around each other like they'd been doing this for years. By evening, they were both exhausted and covered in dirt. Sadie sat on a log and wiped her forehead, and Perry dropped down beside her, handing her a canteen.
You're a mess.
Look who's talking.
He grinned and kissed her temple, and she leaned into him, her eyes closing.
This is good.
Yeah. It is.
They sat there as the sun dipped lower, the bayou humming with crickets and frogs. Sadie felt Perry's hand find hers, his fingers lacing through hers, and she smiled.
Do you ever think about how we got here?
All the time.
If Kincaid hadn't tried to trap me, we never would have met.
Then, I guess I owe him one.
She laughed and shook her head.
Don't say that.
All right, but I'm still glad it happened.
She turned to look at him, her expression serious.
Me too.
He kissed her, slow and deep, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Perry rested his forehead against hers, his voice quiet.
I'm not going anywhere, Seti.
Good. Because I'm keeping you.
They stayed there until the stars came out, wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretching out before them like an open road. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and laughter. They framed the cabin walls, dug the well, and planted the garden. Perry proved to be a quick learner, and Sadie taught him everything she knew about beekeeping. The hives thrived, and soon they had their first harvest of honey, golden and sweet. Sadie bottled it carefully and took a dozen jars into town to sell. They were gone within an hour, and she came back with enough money to buy more supplies and a beautiful quilt for their new bed.
We're actually doing this.
We are.
Perry pulled her into a kiss, and she laughed against his mouth. That night, they sat on the half-finished porch and watched the fireflies dance over the bayou. Sadie leaned against Perry's shoulder, her hand in his, and felt a deep sense of peace.
Do you ever miss the tracking?
Sometimes. But this is better.
Better how?
Because I'm with you.
She smiled and kissed him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. The air was warm and thick with the scent of jasmine, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Seti closed her eyes and let herself sink into the moment, into the certainty that this was where she was meant to be. Perry's voice was soft in her ear.
Thank you.
For what?
For giving me a reason to stay.
She turned and cupped his face in her hands, her eyes bright.
You gave me the same thing.
They kissed under the stars, and the night stretched out around them, full of promise and possibility. A month later, the cabin was finished. It was small, but sturdy, with whitewashed walls and a wide porch that caught the morning sun. Seti stood in the doorway and looked out at the land they'd claimed together, the hives humming in the clearing, the garden green and thriving. Perry came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder.
What do you think?
I think it's perfect.
Good. Because I built it for you.
She turned in his arms and kissed him, her hands sliding up to his shoulders.
For us.
For us.
They spent the day settling in, arranging the furniture they'd built and hanging the quilt on the wall. Sadie set up her beekeeping tools in the small workshop Perry had added to the side of the cabin, and he carved their initials into the porch railing. When evening came, they lit a fire in the fire pit and sat together under the stars, sharing a jar of honey and fresh bread from town.
This is everything I ever wanted.
Me too.
She leaned against him, her head on his chest, and he wrapped a blanket around them both. The bayou was alive with sound, the chirp of crickets and the distant splash of a gator, and the air was warm and sweet. Perry kissed the top of her head, his voice quiet.
I love you, Sadie.
I love you too.
They sat there until the fire burned low, wrapped in each other's warmth, the future stretching out before them, bright and full of hope. The next morning, Sadie woke to the sound of bees humming outside the window. She smiled and stretched, feeling Perry's arm tighten around her waist.
Morning.
Morning.
He kissed her shoulder, and she turned to face him, her eyes bright.
What's the plan today?
I was thinking we could check the hives, fix that loose board on the porch, maybe take Rosie for a ride.
Sounds good.
They got up and dressed, moving easily around each other in the small cabin. Sadie made coffee while Perry fried eggs, and they ate together on the porch, watching the sun rise over the bayou. The day was warm and clear, and Sadie felt a deep contentment settle over her. This was home. This was family. This was everything she'd ever needed. Perry reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles.
Happy? I see you're warned and unresting she were tands off for some time, compared to less of the time. The war the wind stas but that 4 year in love corns. There were their love place, with a lust lots mark again.
More than I've ever been.
He smiled and brought her hand to his lips, kissing her fingers gently.
Good. Because I plan to keep you that way.
I'm counting on it.
They finished breakfast and walked out to the hives together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the day brought. The bees buzzed around them, golden in the morning light, and Sadie knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. A month later, they stood together on the porch at sunset, watching the sky turn pink and gold over the bayou. The cabin was finished, the hives were thriving, and the garden was heavy with tomatoes and squash. Rosie grazed peacefully in the small corral Perry had built, and the air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and magnolia. Sadie leaned against the railing, Perry's arm around her shoulders, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over her.
We did it.
We did.
He turned her to face him, his hands on her waist, his expression tender.
I want to ask you something.
What?
Marry me.
Sadie's breath caught, her eyes wide.
Perry.
I know we haven't been together long, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to build a future with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. Say yes.
Tears welled in her eyes, and she laughed, throwing her arms around his neck.
Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes.
He lifted her off her feet and kissed her, spinning her around as she laughed and cried at the same time. When he set her down, he pulled a simple gold band from his pocket, one he'd had made in town, and slipped it onto her finger.
It's not much.
It's perfect.
She kissed him again, her hands cupping his face, and he held her close, his heart full. They stood there on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, wrapped in each other's arms, and Sadie felt a deep certainty settle over her. This was forever. This was home. This was the life she'd always dreamed of, but never dared to hope for. Perry rested his forehead against hers, his voice soft.
I love you, Sadie Dalton. Soon to be, Sadie Reed.
I love you too, Perry. More than anything.
They watched the stars come out together, the bayou settling into its evening chorus, and the future stretched out before them bright and boundless. Whatever came next, they would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart, for all the days of their lives.